And that allowing is a great substitute for doing, and trusting, and knowing that when you align yourself in the way that I'm asking you to align yourself here today as I speak to you about meaning, when you align yourself this way and begin to trust in what Lao Tzu called your original nature, and when you understand your original nature and you return to it, basically that's all you're ever doing. Even with all of the medical practitioners that are out there, basically they're really trying to help you to return to your original nature, your nature of well-being. There's not a doctor on this planet that can heal anybody, and they will all tell you that the body is the hero. It is not any medicines or any surgeries or anything out there that is what's doing it. That healing is this most magical thing. It's like the wind, you know. It's just, you can't get a hold of it, you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't grasp it, and all you can do is just watch the results, watch the effects of it. You cut your hand and it bleeds, and you just watch it. And all of a sudden, things start happening inside of your body, and red blood cells head towards that direction, and white blood cells start doing this, and all kinds of things begin happening, not just there, but in your heart, and in your lymph system, and in your elimination system, and then your neurological system. It all starts working together, and it starts sending things to it, and such a scab forms, and then the scab dries up, and then there's a scar, and then things start. Nobody's done anything. What is there to do? It's part of the magic of allowing, of just getting out of the way and not trying to do too much interfering. Yeah, if there's something in there that you have to take out, you take it out gently, but you don't fill yourself with chemicals and things that the body is going to just have to process and have difficulty with as well. This is from Abraham Heschel in a wonderful book called Man is Not Alone. I loved it. He said, life is not meaningful unless it is serving an end beyond itself, unless it is of value to someone else. That you'll never find meaning through your ego. Life is not meaningful unless it is serving an end beyond itself, unless it is of value to someone else. And secondly, this is from Albert Schweitzer, everyone's hero. The one possible way of giving meaning to your existence is that of raising your natural relation to the world to a spiritual one. In other words, you have to return to spirit if you're going to find meaning. This is from Emmanuel. Our mind doesn't know the way. Our heart has already been there. And our soul never left. Welcome home. Isn't that good? Our mind doesn't know the way, our heart has already been there, and our soul never left. And this is what I wrote. Having arrived home, each breath we take is an expression of our life's purpose. We no longer struggle to win, to gain the approval of others, to meet expectations others had for us, to acquire, to achieve, to hoard, or to fulfill someone else's idea of our dharma. We let go of conflict, certainty, being right, fighting, dominating, vanquishing, and feeling superior. All of this ego stuff loses its power and attraction when we arrive home, where meaning and purpose welcome us. We are home. From our home is where we began. You got to know that that's our home. That was our beginning. Ambition, all the way away from our home to take on a false self, a reverse and all of the signs of coming back, returning home. And now we're home. And this is where meaning begins to be the dominant force in your life. It begins to be the all. And those around you or in your life and those you encounter who would try to take you away from your meaning no longer even become obstacles to you. They become, in the Tao it says, a good man is a bad man's teacher, and a bad man is a good man's job. They become your job. They no longer become someone who annoys you and finds fault with you. If they do find fault with you, you're immune to it. As Maslow used to say, learn these two things and you're self-actualized. Become independent of the good opinion of other people and detach yourselves from outcome. In other words, do what you do because it is your calling.
So here are 5 attitudes that I believe that we need to cultivate. The first of these is, I am a human being expressing God without reservation. This is an attitude that says, who I am is particular, is individual, but I am expressing God. And therefore, I am honorable, I am worthy, I count, and I shouldn't be thinking of myself as something that is less than valuable. That's the first. The second is, I accept myself without complaint. I have a slogan that I use in my own life. It says, whenever I hear my children complaining or other people and they ask me for advice, I always say, don't complain, don't explain. Don't complain, don't explain. I accept myself without complaint. I look at the body that I'm in, and I understand that this is nothing more than my curriculum to God. There are things about it that if I were to be designing it myself, perhaps I would have done a little differently. I might have put a little extra hair on the top. I might have made myself a little taller. I might have made myself a little darker. I might have made my eyes a different color, whatever it is. But that isn't up to me. Because who I am is not this thing that I occupy. This is just a garage where I park my soul. And it doesn't matter. It is my curriculum to God. And whether it can see or can't see, whether it's in a wheelchair, whether it's 4'1" or 7'3", whether it's dark or white, whether it's living on the plains of the Kalahari, or whether it's living in New Guinea, or in Detroit, or Chicago, it doesn't make any difference. I accept myself without complaint. This is what I showed up in. And not only do I accept myself without complaint, but I accept life without complaining. And all of us have that choice, and we don't listen to that inner voice. That inner voice. I've often said that if prayer is you talking to God, then your intuition is God talking to you. And that intuition is something you want to listen to. And complaining about anything in your world, particularly about yourself, is a way of blocking the free flow of the divine intelligence that is everywhere and wants to be delivering abundance into your life. The third is, and this is a hard one for people, is I take full responsibility for my life. I take full responsibility for my life. You see, if you are disconnected or feel disconnected from the divine source, you cannot manifest. The separation is what keeps you from connecting. You can't align yourself. Not taking responsibility for your life and anything in it. And I get letters from people who feel that I shouldn't be saying this because people who have illnesses that they can't do anything about, they don't want to have to take responsibility for them. Or people who have been victims abuse and things like this, don't want to take responsibility for them. Taking responsibility doesn't mean that you feel guilty about anything that has come your way. It means that I have attracted this into my life in some way that I don't understand. It has showed up in my life, and it's my life. And I want to be able to ensure that these things don't show up anymore, and also I want to be able to send them out of my life. But I can't do it if I don't assume a kind of responsibility for them. No guilt. And the fourth one is, I take on no guilt. If to feel worthy, you don't take on guilt. Just taking on this sense of responsibility. If I get anything in my body, that if it's a hernia, if it's an ache, if it's a pain, if it were a cancer, if it were arthritis, if it's I can't sleep, if it's a cold, if it's a backache, if it's a headache, whatever it is, I am going to say, there's something in me that has attracted this. Rather than, I don't know how this happened, I'm just a victim. These kind of things happen. We live in a carcinogenic world, and these kind of things just happen. It's like the minute that you take responsibility for it, you connect to the divine source, which can heal it. The minute that you say, I had nothing to do with this, then you put that barrier up there, and you're disconnected from the healing of it. So I'm not talking, I want to re-emphasize, I'm not talking about feeling guilty about it. I'm talking about saying, it's here, I've experienced it, I can do something with it, I can either go back to that stage of being an athlete and being a warrior and say, it's all in my ego, or I can do something profound about it, which is to say I can teach and become a statesman and a spiritual being by teaching others how to avoid having this happen. It came to me for a reason. I don't have to understand it, but I take responsibility for it. No guilt, no abdicating the person who was responsible for it and saying, oh, it wasn't their fault. None of that. No removal of the punishment that the person deserves for that kind of conduct. None of that. Simply taking responsibility and saying, I now connect to whatever it is that's in my life, and I no longer am going to carry around the anguish and the guilt there, any place in my life. As soon as you do that, you honor your worthiness to receive the healing, to receive the abundance, to receive the love that might have been missing from your life. The fifth and final affirmation or attitude to create for ourselves a sense of being worthy is to have congruency in your life. Congruency. I understand the importance of harmony between my thoughts, my feelings, and my behaviors. Very often, most of the problems that we face as people come from our inability to have congruency or harmony exist between what I think, what I feel, and how I behave. I may think one thing, I may feel something else, and then behave in a different way. And to have a congruency is to honor your worthiness. Virtually all addictions come from an incongruency. I have a thought about one thing, I feel something else, and then I behave in a different way. And that incongruency is what keeps us from feeling worthy.
The idea of having a quiet mind. When I first started practicing meditating, which I encourage people to do, not from any Far Eastern guru loincloth kind of thing at all, but as a way of understanding that there's another dimension. If I were to take you, the listener, and to put you in chains, and to put you in a dungeon, and to deny you light and human contact for the rest of your life, you would probably say to yourself, this is the end. I mean, this is the end. I can't handle this. There are some people, believe it or not, among us, who, if you were to do that very same thing, would say, this is a beginning. There's a whole world there. If any of us were forced to learn how to go into that world, we would discover many, many, many things about ourselves. And I'm talking about the world of the mind. It's not an accident that all of the great spiritual masters have encouraged a kind of meditation of one kind or another, and that most advanced people, most awakened people, practice it on a regular basis. It's not an accident. You begin to discover how slimy your mind is. The thoughts that you have all the time, and how much disasterizing we do with our minds, and how much stuff that we occupy our minds with that is so unnecessary and so silly, so foolish, so destructive, that quieting our mind and meditating really go hand in hand. Now, meditating doesn't require a lot of training. It doesn't require somebody teaching you exactly how to do it or whatever, because that defeats the purpose of meditating. When you meditate, you really want to go in there and quiet your mind. And what you want to be able to do in your life is to have an open, but not a rampage going on inside of your mind, not 1,000 thoughts barraging it. And these thoughts that you have, these are yours. These are your creation. I used to tell people as a therapist, if you don't believe that you're in control of your thoughts, then I want you to tell me who is. Then I want you to find all those people who are in control of your thoughts and send them all to me. Then I will treat them, and you will get better, which is absurd. Obviously, you're not going to get better by treating somebody else. You are the creator of thought, which means that in some metaphysical way, you're the creator of your life. Thought originates with each one of us. But most of us have trained ourselves to believe that whatever we think just sort of happens, and thoughts just sort of, I call it the pop-in theory, you know? They just sort of pop in, and I can't help it. Boop, there's a thought, and it's just there. And I can't help it, it just happened. That isn't true when you train your mind. We spend so much of our energy training ourselves in all kinds of areas. We train ourselves in business. If we're going to get a new computer system, we go out and we spend millions of dollars in a company, and we train people how to work it. And we want to become good at golf or swimming or tennis or backgammon or anything that you can think of. We know that we got to go out and we got to practice and we got to train ourselves. We train ourselves. And we ignore our mind, which is 99% of who we are. We just completely ignore it. Like there's no training available for our minds. And we can all do that. I've really learned how to do it myself. No one ever taught me. You know, when I used to teach at university, I taught in Berlin for half a year. There was 70 students in the class. And I would have the first student introduce themselves and their name. Then I would have the second student introduce the person who was just introduced and himself. And each time I would repeat it. And I'd have the third student introduce the two that he had just introduced plus himself. And we do that for the whole class. By the time we got to the 70th student, they had to introduce everybody in the class by name, and I would then repeat each one of them. And I just had a very simple technique for doing that. It was just like concentrated effort on making my mind remember 70 people's names in an hour and a half. Now, I wasn't doing it to waste an hour and a half. This was a class on teaching people how to identify neurotic behavior in people. And it's like what I wanted to do was to teach them that they could do things with their minds, just like their patients do, that they never thought of, that they never even dreamt were possible for them. 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, they would have like 80, 90% recall. And by the end of the fourth or fifth week, everybody knew everybody's name in the class, and they had all trained themselves. And most people go out there and they're introduced to somebody, they say, hello, my name is Wayne. They say, what would you say your name was? They can't remember one person's name in 1 minute. And they think that, oh, I have a poor memory. But it's because they don't train. Well, the mind can be trained, and meditating is a perfect way to do that. And there's a wonderful world in there, in your mind. Quieting your mind means that you're no longer susceptible to all of the external influences that are around you. I'm always amazed when I watch the U.S. Open tennis championships that are played in New York right near LaGuardia at how the players are able to continue playing with jets going on overhead. And yet, when I am really completely involved in a tennis match, I've had people where I've played, I've had jackhammers going next to me, and my opponent is going crazy. They have to go over there, and I tell them, I don't notice it. My concentration is on the ball. And I don't hear that lawnmower going off or the jackhammer going or the airplane going on overhead. We can train ourselves to do that. The people who are really good at any game or any activity that requires concentration know how to do that. Well, we all want to be able to be better at that, and we don't want to have our minds occupied, particularly with worry and anxiety and stressful kinds of things. So you have to learn how to focus your mind, how to get focused, and keep yourself from creating those kinds of thoughts that are always impinging on your consciousness. Miracles are available there. You talk about surrendering. I meditated for a long time. It's like there would be a light. I would have this light that I would create. And it's really interesting that you can create a light with your eyes closed in a dark room. So you don't really need your eyes to create light. You need your mind to create light. Your mind can create light. And all of us do it in our dreams. We can create a color in our dream without any light. So that Our minds are capable of producing that, and our minds can create smells, and we can create sounds. We do all of that in our dream, and that's just a pure thought state. So what you want to do is get to that pure thought state.